Welcome back to the daily Rambam class. We are up to chapter 8 of the laws of mikvahs. We are very near the completion of the entire 10th volume of the Rambam. It is Thursday. Let's take a quick look at where we are up to in the Rambam. We are learning the Mishnah Torah. As mentioned, we are in volume number 10, Sefer Torah, the Book of Purity, which has a total of 144 chapters, 8 subjects. And we're on to the last subject, the 8th subject, the laws of mikvahs, which can be subdivided into 4 discussions. The first discussion on immersion in intervening substances, the first 3 chapters, and then the next 5 chapters are the kosher mikveh, and that's what we'll be concluding today. And then over the next 3 days, we'll be learning about different levels of mikvahs, doubts of mikvahs, and finally the purity of hands through a mikveh. But for today, let's learn our final discussion on kosher mikvahs. Laws of mikvahs, chapter 8, halacha number 1. Any body of water that is in contact with the mikveh is considered as the mikveh itself and can be used for immersion. And cavities that are next to the opening of a mikveh or the footprints left by animals share a point of contact with the water of the mikveh that is as large as the mouthpiece of a drinking pouch. They may be used for immersion. Now, this is a very significant halacha for today because we want mikvahs to be clean. Now, how do you ensure the mikvah is clean if it's not going to be raining for the next 6 months and you need pure rainwater for your mikvah? So I don't know if the other rabbis have touched upon it, but the way a mikvah is constructed is what's called either bar al gabe bar or bar midatzad. So what you have is you have one pool of water, and then on top of that pool, you have another pool of water. And then what happens is, between these 2 pools of water, there is a little cavity. And then what happens is, you fill it all up with water. You still see my screen share? Here we go. You fill it all up with water, meaning that you pour water in from the top, rainwater. You don't pour it in. You let rainwater flow straight into these 2 pools, one on top of the other. It starts by filling up the bottom pool, and as the water fills up the bottom pool, eventually it's full. And then that's all the amount of rainwater you have, that's fine. If you have more rainwater, you can keep filling it up, full, till the whole thing is full with water. Then what happens is, when you want to clean the mikveh, you can empty out the top pool of water. And then, whoops, I did that wrong. But either way, you get the idea. You can empty out the top pool of water, and then the bottom pool is still full of water, which is rainwater. And then you could fill the top mikveh with tap water. But since this pool of water is touching the other pool of water through this channel over here, so it's all considered a kosher mikveh. This is when a mikveh is built, what's called bar al gabe bar, one put on top of the other put. Other opinions say that it's like, and so some opinions say that this is what prevents the waters from mixing by putting one on top of the other. The bottom pool stays cold, the top pool gets heated up, and that way the heat also separates them. Others say that you should actually have the 2 pools not on top of each other, but rather side by side. And then you have your little channel over here connecting the 2. And then when you, this is, let's say, your rainwater, and then you just change this water. Now, when you change this water, I guess you'll lose whatever rainwater is above the line, but you won't lose the rainwater that's below the line. So I guess let's say it's like that. So you fill up now this mikveh, you empty out this mikveh, and then you fill it up. But then as it reaches this water level, then it kisses with this pool, and then it's all considered an extension of a mikveh. Different ways of it being done. It's quite an interesting topic. But that's what the halacha, the Rambam just said in the first halacha, that even if you have a pool of tap water, if it's touching the pool of rainwater, then it's also kosher. Back to the text. Halacha number 2. Cavities at the side of the mikveh or crevices at the side of a mikveh may be used for immersion even if they have only the slightest point of contact with the water of the mikveh. Even if there's just a slight perforation going from the rainwater to this other cavity of water on its side, then that is still, that side pool can also be used for toveling, for dipping. Halacha number 3, when a needle was placed on the steps leading to a mikveh, but what happened was it was higher than the water level. So one may move his hand back and forth in the water to create waves. Once the wave passes over the needle, it regains purity. So although it's above the water level, you can make waves so that it's suddenly within water level, and then it becomes pure. By the way, this particular Rambam is straight out of the Mishnah, and is recited in shul sometimes before Kaddish D'Rabbanan. The following laws apply to a hidden reservoir in a mikveh. If the ground that separates between the mikveh and the reservoir is sturdy and capable of remaining over the course of time, then one may not use the water in the reservoir for immersion unless it shares a point of contact with the mikveh as large as the mouthpiece of a drinking pouch. If it is not capable of remaining for an extended period, one may immerse in its water as long as it shares any contact whatsoever with the water of the mikveh. So now we're discussing, when you do have a separate pool of water, what level of contact does it need? So now we say that when there's a pool within, hidden beneath all the sides of this mikveh, so if the wall between it is somewhat flimsy or temporary, then even the slightest contact works. But if it's a stronger wall, then you need a larger hole to connect the two. Halacha number 5. When the wall between two mikvahs is cracked in half, the two mikvahs are considered as joined. So now we're addressing a different topic, which is that in order for a mikvah to be kosher, it needs to have 40 sa'ah of water. If it has less than 40 sa'ah, then it doesn't qualify. So if you had two mikvahs side by side and each mikvah had only 20 sa'ah, but there was a crack between them, they can join together. If the wall is cracked horizontally, not vertically, not down, but horizontally, then they are not considered as joined unless there is a point of contact the size of the mouthpiece of a drinking pouch. So then you need a larger form of contact if it's not going down but across. If the water is joined above the wall, so there's a wall and then the waters are overflowing that middle wall. Obviously, that middle wall is a little shorter than the other walls, which is allowing it to overflow. They are considered as joined, provided that there's a layer of water, even as thin as a garlic peel. So as long as the water is flowing over that wall to the slightest amount, then that works. Connecting them over the width of the space of the size of the mouthpiece of a drinking pouch, and it needs to be of that width of the mouth of a drinking pouch. Halacha number 6. How large is the measure of the hole the size of the mouthpiece of a drinking pouch? Just when you were wondering. A circle with a diameter, the width sufficient to enable 2 average-sized fingers of an ordinary person to rotate within it. The fingers mentioned do not refer to the thumb, but to the first 2 of the 4 of the palm of one's hands. These 2 fingers. Any entity present in the hole the size of the mouthpiece of a drinking pouch reduces that measure, so it needs to be completely clear. This applies even to entities that were created from the water. So even if you had a fish that got stuck inside over there, then that's still a problem. You want to have a clear water flow between the two. If there is a doubt whether a hole is the size of the mouthpiece of a drinking pouch or not, then the mikvahs are not considered as joined. Now, why do we say that? Why are we saying that in the case of doubt, you have to be strict? The rationale is that the primary obligation to go to mikveh is biblical, it's scriptural. It says so in the Torah. And whenever the primary obligation is scriptural, even when the measure stated is conveyed by the oral tradition, we rule stringently when there is an unresolved doubt regarding its measure. So this is an interesting phenomena that although it's the rabbis that determined the exact measurements, since there was the measurements of a biblical mitzvah, therefore we follow the rule that when it's a biblical mitzvah, when in doubt, we need to be stringent. Halacha number 7, mikvahs may be purified from each other. An upper mikvah from a lower one, and a faraway mikvah from one that is close. What is implied? An earthenware or lead pipe. For pipes do not disqualify a mikvah. This means a straight pipe without any crevices inside of it. For pipes do not disqualify a mikvah is brought, inserted into the acceptable mikvah. One places his hand under it until it becomes full, and then takes it and connects it so that the water in the pipe will become intermingled with the water of the other mikvah. So you have this pipe that acts as an extension to allow the waters to flow from one to the other. Even if the point where they become intermingled is only a hair's breadth, it is sufficient. Then the two mikvahs connected by the pipe are considered as one. Now, this doesn't mean that you could put water into a pipe and then walk down the road and pour it into the other mikvah. We mean that the pipe is simultaneously touching both mikvahs, and you're using your hand to allow the water to actually reach the second mikvah, but it's still completely connected. There's direct contact between the two mikvahs. Halacha number 8, the following rules apply when there are 3 cavities in a wadi. The higher one and the lower one contain only 20 sa'ah. The middle one contains 40 sa'ah. And the current of rain water flows through the wadi. Although the current of water flows into the cavities and out of them, it does not join the cavities as one. Because it's only because it's raining. Once it stops raining, they won't be connected. Hence, only the middle one is acceptable for immersion. The rationale is that the water that is flowing does not join mikvahs unless it collects in one place. It's not a pool. It's rather just a flow. Halacha number 9, soft mud from which a cow drinks may be measured as part of the mikveh. It's counted. If it is so thick that a cow would not drink from it, then it is not measured as part of the mikveh. Halacha number 10, when the mikveh contains 40 sa'ah of water and mud. So you have the measurement, but it's not pure water, it's water with mud. One may immerse in both the mud and the water. In which mud may one immerse? In soft mud over which water collects. If the water was on one side and the soft mud was on the other side, then one may immerse in the water but not in the mud. So only if it's all mixed together can you actually put your foot into that soft mud and still be considered in the mikveh. But if it's on two sides, you've got your mud accumulated against the one wall and the water on the other side, then you should go on the water side. Halacha number 11, any substance that was created from the water, like red worms, is acceptable for immersion. It adds up to the volume of water. One may immerse in the eye of a giant fish. I don't know if that ever happened or ever will happen, but in the will of Hashem, it exists. That if a fish was so big that it had 40 sa'ah within its eye, then that would constitute a kosher mikveh. We're not talking as far as cruelty to animals. That's definitely a problem. We're talking in the context of the laws of mikvahs. Finally, halacha number 12, but a mikveh contains exactly 40 sa'ah of water and 2 people immersed, one after the other. The first is pure. This obviously means where the walls were higher. It wasn't full to the top. It was full, let's say the mikveh was able to contain 50 sa'ah, and there were exactly 40 sa'ah inside of it. So when the first person went in, he didn't lose the 40 sa'ah, they didn't go over the walls. But once he left, then he took some water with him. And therefore the second person remains impure. By the time the second guy goes in, he's now dealing with 39.999 sa'ah. The rationale is that some of the water contained in the original 40 sa'ah was removed. This stringency applies even if the feet of the first person were still in the water when the second person immerses. So you might say that as long as the first guy is not completely out, any water that's on his body is considered like it's still in the mikveh. But we don't say that. Whatever has left the mikveh has already left the mikveh, and therefore the second person does not have 40 sa'ah, he doesn't have a kosher mikveh. I see a question came in a bit earlier. Why did the Rabbanim choose this Mishnah as one which could be said before Kaddish Rabbanan? So it is actually, I believe it's the last Mishnah, and it speaks about purity. And there's a close connection between Kaddish and bringing purity to the neshama. That's just offhand. I'm sure there's more on that. Back to the text. If one immersed a thick sponge or the like in such a mikveh and lifted it up, So as long as part of the sponge is still in the water, touching the water, then a person who immerses afterwards is pure because the water that's in the sponge is still considered present. But when one immerses a bed or the like, even though he pushes its legs into the thick mud at the bottom of the mikveh, so the mikveh is not tall enough for the bed. So by the way, nowadays we don't put beds in mikvehs, just in case you're wondering. I've never seen a bed in a mikveh. But in temple times, anything that needed to enter into a space of purity would have to be pure. So that included utensils, even beds. So a person would be allowed to push the beds down into the earth, even though they're now below the cavity of the mikveh, until the top is submerged. The rationale is that it does not become sunk in the water until it becomes immersed in the water first. So whatever's going into the bottom of the mud is first going in the mikveh. When one immerses a large pot in a mikveh with a limited amount of water, so the mikveh had exactly 40 sa'ah, it is impure as it was beforehand because the water will splash out of the mikveh. Thus, the mikveh will be less than 40 sa'ah. So what should he do? So that's that you just kind of plunged it in downwards, because then all that airspace is busy ejecting out of the mikveh, out of the water, out of the mikveh. But he should lower it via its opening, put it in upside down like that, and then turn it around. Turn it over in the mikveh, and then again turn it back upside down and lift it with its base so it doesn't take any water out. This, by the way, practically I also do when I take stuff to the mikveh vessels, when I'm toveling new dishes. Usually I won't take out the cup upwards, because then whatever water I just took out is no longer rainwater. So you've just reduced the volume of rainwater. I'll always turn it upside down in the mikveh and then take it out, because that way that water was never drawn. When the water in the mikveh is dispersed, so let's say you have the water level is low, but there's a lot of water. So what you can do is you could press even bundles of straw, bundles of reeds into the water from the sides until the water level will rise and one can descend and immerse within. Okay. I felt like I was about to say Kaddish over here because I was like, we always say, also this Mishnah. And now, time to test your knowledge.